What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little mailbag. At John Middlekauff, fire in those DMs. I need more questions because a lot of them got lost in the shuffle because of I talked about this yesterday, but I got so many DMs about the wedding that it's just made my inbox insane. So if you asked a question and I haven't even come close to answering it over the last week, like either re-ask it or throw another comment and it'll kind of come back up near the top. So I would recommend that if you want to get questions because it's the off season and obviously I'm going to need you guys. You guys are part of the team here. Question for the bag. What do you make of the Chargers offseason? I know we will be primarily building through the draft, re-signing our studs, Mac, and hopefully Slater. Will you guys re-sign Mac? Maybe you meant that. And look to avoid overpaying free agents. But looking at our cap space, we have as much as any team in the league and didn't make many signings. I wasn't looking at overpaying any stars, but thought we could build up our depth and retain starters like Poona Ford and J.K. Dobbins. Wanted your take on Harbaugh's second offseason as he builds the team in his image. Many are critical of our offseason, but we talked about this earlier. You have to pay such a premium to get any of these players. So let's say you're the Chargers and you got some space. I don't have your cap space in front of me, but more than enough space to sign a couple sweet guys. It's like, okay, you're just going to sign like Josh Sweat, the dude who went to the Cardinals for like $90 million and a ton of guaranteed. Are you going to sign Milton Williams for 25, 26? Like you're already a playoff team. Signing a big contract like that limits your flexibility. An underrated part about cap space is you can roll it over. So if you're a good team and you don't feel comfortable overpaying, because that's what you have to do the last week, you overpay. Which, if the guy's solid for you, okay. But, like, you're looking for now difference makers. So when you give Khalil Mack $18 million, again, it's been a long week, a little fuzzy, but I remember seeing the Chargers re-sign Khalil Mack $18 million. You feel really good about that. Even if it's a little overpay, you go, he's our type guy. Jim likes him. He fits our culture. When you sign these outside guys, it's kind of risky. So I got no problem not playing in the deep end. This notion, too, that they were going to sign, like, they're not going to give T. Higgins $100 million. They were never going to trade for DK Metcalf. Like, that's not how Harbaugh does business. I think I'd have full faith it's going to be pretty good. I did question a little bit Najee Harris, who actually, I think the last couple of years has looked the best of his NFL career. They gave him $10 million. Again, I'm not Mike Florio here breaking down the contract, so I just kind of take it on face value till I read otherwise. But he's making decent money. Jim Harbaugh, when I lived in the Bay Area, Najee Harris was the biggest star in the Bay Area. He went to Antioch High School, and he was being recruited by Alabama. Well, Jim Harbaugh was trying to sign him as well and used to recruit the hell out of him at Michigan. So, like, that's one of those that Jim's liked since he was in high school, and now he finally got him. Congrats on the wedding. Funny enough, my dad was also in Nashville this past weekend. I have a question for the mailbag. Why do you think it's a bad idea for the Browns to extend Myles Garrett? I don't believe that they are that far away from contending. They won 11 games and made the playoffs in 23 with a heavily injured roster. I think all they need is competent quarterback play, and they'll be right back in the playoffs. Well, I didn't, trust me, I would want Myles Garrett on my team. And I didn't just come up with the idea, let's trade him. He came out and said, trade me. If Myles Garrett had said, I want to be a Brown, I would have done exactly what they did, pay him. You're in the business of keeping. But once he goes, I want out, and you go, we got this Deshaun Watson disaster. We got the number 2 overall pick. I just thought it would have been a time to kind of blow it up. And not even blow it up. Like you said, you still got good players. You just kind of get a bunch of first-round picks. It's like a transitional period. And they obviously threw a bunch of money at him, which I respect. They They kind of went old school. He's like, I want to trade. And I don't think he was just bullshitting. Like, I think he was pretty adamant. He was going on the shows, he was doing it. And they're like, we're going to offer you so much money. Good luck saying no. And I'll say this about Jimmy Haslam: they pay. They pay a lot of cash. And this is what I said about like if Shador had gone into that interview, like you'd want like you get really really rich with that team, like really rich. I mean, he pays more than any team in the league. When will NFL GMs wake up? NFL quarterback is the only position in pro sports and really the only job in the economy where they pay a mediocre person the same as the best person in their field. An average quarterback should not be paid what Mahomes makes because, quote, he's the next up. That's what the market is. No, it isn't. They're overpaying. I've never understood that. And I understand the revenue sharing, the way the business partnership works, because that's, while the NFL owns, the owners own the teams, they're still in a partnership with the players, and you got to pay. Like there is a 50-50 or 48-52 or whatever the exact percentage. There's a revenue split. It's essentially 50-50. And you got to pay the players. So I think they look at it, we got to pay somebody. But to me, if you want to win and you're giving a quarterback who you know is probably not a top 10 quarterback 150, $200 million, I just think you're an idiot. And it's like, well, just what else am I going to do? I don't know. There's got to be, figure it out, other options, see what else is out there, play out the contract. That's always my symbol. Play out the contract. It's like Brock Purdy wants $200 million, which if his agent called and said that, I wouldn't blame him. That's what Trevor Lawrence got. If I was the Niners, I'd be like, here's 125. Like, well, that's not what the market is. Well, then fine, we'll play out next year. We'll play again on next year on $1.5 million. We'll give you $125 million guaranteed right now. I know you want 200, but we'll give you 125, or we can play next year for $1.5 million. You want to do that? Because if you do, that's what we'll do. I think some of these teams have lost the logic of having some of this leverage. And I think a lot of times people don't want to deal with the holdouts and stuff, which I get, but it's insane. It's like if Josh Allen makes $250 million, what's Tua? A $50 million guarantee? Is Josh Allen 5 times better than Tua Tagovailoa? I'm not trying to hate on Tua. I respect the guy. He's proven he's like a solid player. But Josh is in a different universe. Lamar's in a different universe. So it's like, well, we got to pay him what, 80%? Well, what, like you said, the sales guy who brings in $10 million does not make the same as the sales guy that's bringing in $400,000. That guy makes way more money. Shouldn't quarterbacks be compensated on that as well? Like this guy's way better by every single metric. But it's just, I don't know. It's just not the way it works. Welcome back, Mason Rudolph, I guess. Could you explain to me what the Steelers are doing? 2 high drama wide receivers and a backup quarterback? Well, I just think the Rodgers thing feels inevitable. And however he's approaching this, he's not in a huge rush. So I would imagine Aaron Rodgers starting quarterback, Rudolph's your backup, and maybe you trade up for like Shador. That would be my educated guess as we sit here Thursday, March 13th. In a league obsessed with numbers, metrics, and analytics, how does the observations about a player, quote unquote, losing a step stand up? I understand when a player timed to the combine when they're 21 or so. Surely will lose a step when they're 33. I see from time to time, and rarely, where they are able to track the speed of a player using the chip. Still, there really is no continuing commentary on player speed from year to year. I'm guessing there is no time 40 during the season. So other than a subjective evaluation by a commenter based only on a player getting a year or two older, say 28 to 30, the commenting that he has lost a step is something to be taken with a grain of salt. Totally agree. I mean, they're not, when he's lost a step, they're not like quantifying it with a numeric value. Like if one time the guy was a 9, now he's a 7.5. This isn't, Madden where his speed rating, his energy in a game has gone down by half. But I think coaches, when you're evaluating a player, like Andy Reid, can watch a guy and go, this guy's not as good as he was 3 years ago on my own team or on a team I compete against because I have a base of knowledge of watching him. If he's on your own team for several years, let's just pick, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. It'd have to be an older player. Let's use Kyle Juszczyk. Let's say the 49ers think he's lost a step and Juszczyk thinks he has not lost a step. Well, Kyle, for 9 years, or eight, I guess it's eight. I keep saying nine, it's 8 years, has evaluated every snap of Kyle Juszczyk's career. So he can watch him and he can base it on, and he can just pull up film, see what he looked like in 2020 or 21. Again, that's a bad. It's kind of a niche player as a fullback, but like tackles, guards. I remember when I was with the Eagles and we signed Ronnie Brown. I remember the first snap or first couple snaps of like OTAs. It looked like he was running in concrete. Like, why does this guy look so slow? And it turns out his legs were just shot. That's the other thing with football. It's such a, running back, at wide receiver, at corner, at linebacker. Foot speed is a pretty big deal. Like, you can get away with a little bit at guard or center or even defensive tackle as long as you still have a little burst. But like, if you're a running back and you lose a step, like that's a problem. Huge Ohio State fan. Do you think Ryan Day would ever make a good NFL coach? He has a good track record putting quarterbacks in the first round and is a good offensive play caller. He does have flaws, but notably tightening up in big games occasionally. But isn't the NFL always looking for offensive gurus and quarterback development coaches? Well, I got to remove my bias as a well-known Ohio State hater. He doesn't call the plays, though, and he hasn't called the plays. Um, when's the last time Ryan Day called the plays? It feels like it's been a couple years. Could be wrong. Obviously didn't call him this year in their national championship year. Maybe did he call him 2 years ago? Did he take it away from what's his name? Who's your wide receiver coach that makes a bunch of money? That's now the offensive coordinator. Uh, Listen, people I know that know him personally that worked with him in the NFL with the Niners and the Eagles like him a lot. He's very well thought of. I mean, I just sometimes everyone's hanging a left, I got to hang a right. I've never had a negative interaction with a guy. People like him. Clearly pretty impressive guy. That's not an easy job. Handled it pretty well. We nitpick him some of his big game losses. I do think it's hard to be a tough guy because Michigan has just out toughed him when you're just not as tough as certain opponents. So when you lean into that, like you're not gonna get in the ring and go blow for blow with Mike Tyson or Evander Holyfield. You're gonna have to fight them differently. And maybe he learned that, and it kind of made him pivot once he hit the playoffs, and then he just kind of, I mean, it's one of the great playoff runs in recent memory. Blew out Tennessee, blew out Oregon. Uh, who they play then? Texas. I don't even remember that game against Texas. I wouldn't say blew him out, but was in control of that game, and obviously Notre Dame was up big. He's good. There's no disputing it. He's good. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. With the all-new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From dunks to assists to rebounds, get behind your favorite player and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook and make your first pick. First time? Here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Congrats on the nuptials. Totally agree on the silicone rings. Rubber, silicone, same thing. My question is this. The draft by most sources is loaded at defensive line. Is there an edge rusher you like that would be the difference maker available at the end of the first to pair with Aidan Hutchinson to help the Lions' biggest weakness? I got to dive a little deeper into the draft. I'd be lying if I have a great feel for late first, early second round players. The guys I focused on is, I would say, the defensive tackle from Michigan, the obviously Abdul Carter from Penn State. I do think the guy from Stewart from Texas A&M that tested like a freak but only has 4.5 career sacks. I would just base on his testing and just the way he looks, there's no chance he would be there. Like ideally, guys like that should be in the 20s. It's like, wasn't a very productive player, tested like a freak. But I also think you need to be careful of those. Like when the Packers took the dude from Iowa who tested like a freak but never started, and then it's like he's a bust. Um, yeah, I mean, I think you could go D tackle or defensive end. You just need to get someone who can penetrate with Hutchinson. Because if you get another high end pass rusher with that guy, holy shit. So I don't think it necessarily has to be, you said defensive line. Yeah, tackle or end. I think there's just a lot of them. I mean, I think a lot of people think like of the top 30 players, probably like 11 or 12 defensive linemen. So if you just do the math, there are going to be some wide receivers, running backs, and offensive linemen, and clearly a couple quarterbacks that are going to come off the board. So there is going to be, some high end defensive linemen at the end of the first round, which can be pretty rare. And then if you do draft a defensive lineman, you just need him and you need the corner you took last year from Bama. If those guys over the next couple of years can be kind of cornerstone players with Aidan, all of a sudden your defense with Jack Campbell, Aidan Hutchinson, Terrion Arnold, Branch, who's like the safety nickel from Bama, who's sweet, who's really good. All of a sudden, your defense looks a little like your offense. Like you guys are good at every position or got impact guys at every position. Every time this year, I can't help but reminisce and marvel at the fact that Jason Peters was a tight end in college and not only became one of the best offensive tackles of all time, but was undrafted. I was curious since you were a former scout, did you or do you know if scouts always have their eye on potential prospects like that? Not necessarily tight end or offensive tackle, every time but an athletic offensive guard that can be a fullback. I think in every draft there are guys who, can do position flexibility. When I first got out of scouting and started doing radio, the 49ers drafted Bruce Miller, who was a defensive lineman, I think at South Florida or Central Florida, and they turned into fullback. And he was a good fullback. The Chargers have a defensive lineman that plays fullback. So, like, that position is somewhat possible. We'd also, and I know buddies that still do, look at college basketball, kind of that tight end position. Could the guy be a defensive lineman? Could the guy be an offensive tackle? Or could the guy be a tight end? But I do think those situations are kind of outliers. I don't know about Jason Peters' college experience. He went to Arkansas, but he clearly, I mean, by the time I was around Jason Peters, he weighs 340 pounds. So obviously he didn't weigh that in college. But even if he weighed 270 pounds in college, there used to be tight ends that weighed 260, 270, 280 pounds. What was the dude, if you're my age or older, Tony Gonzalez in Kansas City, they had a second tight end. His last name was Dunn. He was basically like a third tackle because Tony wasn't that big of a blocker. So you kind of had to have your second tight end be a blocking tight end. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I think when you look at a player, sometimes there's a wide receiver in college, and I'm sure there's a guy like this every year or two, where you go, he's kind of big and he's not fast enough to play outside. Couldn't he just be like a hybrid slot? Could he get big enough to play tight end? And it happens sometimes. And every once in a while, what was the guy's? Terrell Pryor became a wide receiver. You know what's funny is we do it in college all the time. Like a guy comes out of high school, he's like, I'm play quarterback and I play safety. Then all of a sudden, by like year two, he's playing running back or he's playing wide receiver or he's playing corner. It's like you just do whatever you have to do to start for Alabama or Texas or whatever. But when you come to the pros, no one ever wants to change positions. It's like, what if you change positions and you become a 10-year pro and you make millions of dollars? For the bag. I know you're not a big fan of them, but I have a hypothetical for you. If the Chiefs, I can't even speak, don't trade up to jump the Saints in 2017, do you think Mahomes has similar success in New Orleans? Peyton at head coach, Dennis Allen at defensive coordinator, and guys like Joe Brady, Dan Campbell, and Aaron Glenn on staff. I, I've I'm not anti hypotheticals, I just think sometimes, the draft one, which I'm guilty and a sucker for, is kind of a waste of energy. I do think this one is a pretty cool pivot point in the NFL because that moment, let's face it, led Sean Payton to quitting and now being on the Broncos. Because if Sean Payton has Patrick Mahomes, maybe they don't have three Super Bowls, probably got one or two. I mean, it's fucking Patrick Mahomes. And Sean Payton, like Andy Reid, is offensive genius. And that team was good. So I think it's fair to assume that he would still be there. But you have those moments sometimes where it's like, what if instead of Baker Mayfield at one overall, Josh Allen had gone to the Browns? Because remember that draft was or had gone to the Jets at number three. Because it was Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and then Lamar Jackson. I don't think I'm mixing drafts there, but think about that. Like where you go matters. And I think the example you use, because clearly the Saints liked them, they were pretty good. And it was a pretty awesome place for a quarterback to play. So my guess is it would have worked. At the level of the Chiefs, I don't know. I think that's unfair to say that would work that well. Would they have been a double digit win team every single year, been in the playoffs and had high seeds? I think that's fair to assume. Lifelong Dolphins fan. Last time we won a playoff game, I was in diapers. What do you think of the Zach Wilson signing? I think it's an absolute joke given Tua's injury history. Do you think the Dolphins intentionally signed bad backups so that Tua does not feel threatened? Also, would you say the Dolphins are the softest team in the league? It seems like anytime they are met with a little bit of adversity or cold weather, the team collapses. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will say this is Sean Payton liked him, but didn't like him enough to make him the backup quarterback. So I think when you look, like Mac Jones was the backup quarterback last year, right? So you go, Kyle Shanahan, you signed Mac Jones, you're the backup, and I'm paying you $5 million. But you look at Justin Fields, like he gets benched, and then the Jets give him $30 million. Pretty bold. In this situation, you're taking another team's third string quarterback to turn him into the backup. So Sean Payton could have chose because I knew another team that had planned on signing Jared Stidham. And Sean Payton clearly didn't want to lose him because he resigns him. But if he liked Zach Wilson as much, he would have been like, okay, take him. I'll just keep Zach Wilson for 5 or 6 million. Now, maybe there's a dynamic of Stidham's older. Yeah, I don't know. I Is Zach Wilson good? Based on what we know right now, you would say no. I do think it felt like he matured and people liked him a lot more in Denver than what had happened with the Jets. But like, what were your other options? Sign like Daniel Jones, Gardner Minshew. Like, once you're paying your quarterback as much as you guys are, your backup's probably going to be kind of random. Look who Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson's backups are. Mahomes' backup was Henny, and then Carson Wentz. You said multiple times last season was the worst the Broncos and Chargers will be for the foreseeable future. I agree with you until free agency. I'm a diehard Bronco fan. But just as a football fan and a fan of Herbert and Harbaugh, are the Chargers actually better after free agency? Notable moves are retaining Mack, Jalen Rager, signing Najee Harris, Dante Jackson, and reuniting with Mike Williams. Honestly, I must have missed that. I didn't even see that one. Mike Williams on the Chargers again? They lost Bosa. I mean, they cut him. They lost Gus Edwards, Josh Palmer, and likely J.K. Dobbins. Everyone in our division closed the gap on the Chiefs except the Chargers. We got Ufunga and Greenlaw and Ingram, who chose us over the Chargers, and retained DJ Jones. Raiders kind of sort of upgraded at quarterback. No, they did. Yeah, I mean, I think part of Harbaugh is the guys they drafted last year, they expect them to be better. So they go, we expect Joe Alt to be an all pro. We expect Lad McConkey to be a top 10 wide receiver, top 15 wide receiver. We expect the linebacker we drafted from Michigan to be much like that's how he looks at it. He looks at it from a college perspective. Like I'm developing these young. I expect Herbert to be better. I'm better than my competition. So I think you can't just assume based on free agency teams are better and worse. I mean, most of my like college years in the 2000s, Dan Snyder won free agency every single year, bought all the players, every single free agency, and it never worked out. So this is part of buying players in free agency. It's fun and it's huge headlines, and we don't have anything else going on. It doesn't guarantee you crap. It really doesn't. Listen, I've said I love Hufunga and Greenlaw. I mean, I love Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is a badass. He tore his Achilles. He tried to come back, and his hamstring and other injuries started happening. Like, I hope he's okay, but there is no guarantee that like his lower extremities are all gonna, match up. Love Hufunga. Tore his ACL, then he fucked up his shoulder and his thumb, and he missed a bunch of games last year. Part of the reason the Niners are letting him go is like they got this other kid named Mustafa, who hits just like Hufunga. Who I even saw that St. Brown on his podcast when he had Debo on was like, might have been the hardest I got hit all year. So again, like I would rather have those guys on my team than not, but they've missed a lot of games. And I just think sometimes these guys, no player, like the Chargers didn't want Joey Bosa anymore. It's not like they lost Joey Bosa. They cut him. They did not want him on the team anymore. They want Khalil Mack back. They don't want him. I'm not trying to like defend. I just think sometimes in free agency, you can basically keep any player you really want to keep. Like the Chargers would never let Slater go. Harbaugh would not let Derwin James go. But like, yeah, I could do without this guy. So if you are a player available during free agency, there's a reason behind it. I could have kept you. Well, we didn't have the space. Well, I'll cut other guys. I'll figure it out. This is a puzzle, and I control the pieces. I feel like some people are sleeping on the Packers. There is an opportunity for improvement, but they're essentially bringing back the same roster and added two free agents who are huge upgrades. We know that Jordan Love played hurt all year. Their receivers and O-line played well below expectations, and they gave the Eagles a tough game. How do you feel about the state of the Packers? I say this all the time. I said this when people start DMing me, should we fire a LaFleur? Like, guys, you're going to be okay. I would like my chances now more even than 6 months ago. That a lot of question marks with J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. We can say whatever we want about Sam Darnold. Last year, he played really well. And there is absolutely no guarantee. If J.J. McCarthy has Sam Darnold season, Vikings fans will be doing fucking cartwheels down the hallway. So you went 1-5 in the division. How often are you going to be a playoff team, which I would bet on the Packers be a playoff team next year, and go 1-5 in the division? So if you go 3-3 in the division, you're probably more likely to be a 12 or 13 win team. Now, is Jordan Love, was last year just a banged up year? Was last year more what he's going to be? That's what we got a small sample size with him, right? We have 8 games, 8 good games his first year, which is fair. He never started. Last year was injured, would have some moments, then have some bad moments. A lot of unknowns still with him. I still would bet on it just because we've seen the good. We've seen him play high end. We've seen him play well in a playoff game. But receivers are a little bit of a question mark. What's his name? Got multiple concussions. Watson tore his ACL. You got to feel good about Jacobs. You got to feel good about your tight end. Like you said, you needed a guard, so you overpay Banks. Coach is good. Your GM's good. You're gonna be okay. Packer fans, and I get it. You've kind of been in the same spot now for a while. Uh, you're gonna be fine. It wouldn't shock. Like you might be able to compete to win the division next year. Right now, if I was handicapping the NFC North, because all the Lions guys at least going in this will be healthy, I'd go Lions, which again, new coordinators, no lock, but I'd give them the benefit of the doubt. Lions. Then I think it's a coin flip between you and the Vikings. Because like J.J. McCarthy, I don't know. I'd probably give you the benefit of the doubt right now until J.J. proves to me otherwise. And the Bears are going to be improved. So that division's good. It really is. But the likelihood of you're going 1-5 in that thing again, I would be low.